Okay. I will go ahead and get started. As always, wanted to start with the affirmation that we have. I want to thank everyone for their time, effort, and participation in our work before us today. I want to recognize that it is very difficult and important work, and I appreciate and value the perspectives and professionalism that everyone brings here today. Thank you. So going ahead and getting started, Terry, do you want to do a quick roll call?
Absolutely. Matt Kazia is not here today. Sarah Merrick. I saw her.
I see an S Merrick in the chat. Oh, and I just
she's here. Okay.
Here, yeah.
Okay, Scott Strickland is here. Margaret.
I'm here.
Okay. Sarah Duckwall.
Present.
Ryan Hearn.
Present.
Stacy Llewellyn.
Present.
And Patrick Priest.
Present.
And Andrew Stolfi. Is he with us today? I do not see him. Okay. Yes, Co-Chair Strickland, we have a quorum.
Excellent. So looking at the meeting, I know we have a public comment section. If we can kind of quickly get through that, if there's any kind of general comments. If you're a stakeholder here to talk about a specific bill or make some other comments or other stuff like that, I'd ask that you wait until we're addressing the bill presentation that you would like to speak on. So if there's anyone with kind of general topic questions, comments, or concerns, now would be the time. We'll hold for just a minute to see. I'm not seeing any hands, I'm not seeing anyone leaping out of a seat at the live meeting.
No.
All righty. So next I see on the agenda reviewing and approving the minutes from January 4. And I think we had minutes from January 4. We also had another set of draft minutes, I thought.
Yes,
That's
from
when
February.
you approve both minutes as presented, the sets.
So I think that was a motion to approve both minutes. We have a second.
That.
I hear a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 And I see Sarah Merrick looks like aye from the chat. Any opposed? And any abstaining? Okay, so I see one topic down. So next on the list, I see bill presentation starting with SB 1580 with looks like Evo Trummer from SAFE.
Yeah, and I'm on. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Members of MLAC, for the record, Evo Trummer, Government Relations Director for SAFE. We're the state's non-for-profit workers' compensation insurer. Been around for 100 years. I know we are pressed for time, and I'm just going to recap a couple of things. First, we first presented the general idea to MLAC back in December. We had a abbreviated kind of presentation last week as things were still moving. I am here today, and it has changed again from what I described last week, if it was last week. It has changed again to the DAF6, and I'm here to officially support an unsafe position on the DAF6 amendment to 1580. It was discussed yesterday in the Senate Business and Labor Committee. I'm assuming it's going to be scheduled for work session at some point next week. The committee and co-chairs expressed the interest in hearing from MLAC on this issue. The DAF6 amendment cleans up existing language. It's 656-990 that has been on the books for a long time. It has just been found unworkable in terms of the few and far in between cases of employer fraud in workers' compensation insurance. This language here cleans it up. It clarifies that an employer commits a Class A misdemeanor if, with the intent and knowledge to decrease a premium, submits a false payroll report. The language is there. It got the support from other stakeholders as well. I don't want to speak for them if they want to speak for themselves here today. We think this is a meaningful way of creating a tool to hold bad actors accountable, and we certainly hope we have earned MLAC support for this. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from MLAC members to start? Not seeing any. Any stakeholder feedback or comments as well? I see. It looks like Derek with OBI.
Good morning, everybody. This is Derek Sangston with Oregon Business and Industry. I won't be a copy of what verbatim what Evo said. I just wanted to indicate that with the changes made to the bill by the -6 amendment, taking a more narrow approach to this pretty limited problem, OBI is able to support the -6 as a measured response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other stakeholder comments? Or member comments?
Scott, this is Patrick. I just have one question. So on the bill presentation on the agenda, it has Senate Bill 1580, 1580-3, and 1580-6. I imagine we are just being asked to consider -6.
That
Is
is
what I'm
correct.
hearing. Yeah.
That's correct, Mr. Co-Chair. Thank you for asking the question. Yes, I would ask that you please disregard at this point the base bill 1580, the -3 amendment, and only focus on the -6 amendment, which OBI, my colleague Derek here, also supports and we support. So it's only the -6. If I may say so, also this has been a long journey, 6 months and a lot of work together, and I appreciate everybody's leaning in and the cooperative spirit that we got this done. So I hope this is it in terms of going forward.
All righty, thank you. So I'd like to maybe call a quick caucus, if possible, for MLAC members. I think we have our 2 rooms set up, so we can do a quick caucus. And I will give you a chat or call, Patrick, in just a moment here, so we can discuss on moving forward on this or not.
Perfect.
And,
Sounds good.
Co-chair, this is the first time I've done this, so if things go wonky, it's my technology. It's not my strong suit. So I'm gonna pause the recording and then go to the breakout rooms, okay?
All righty, I was just gonna say, I imagine this being like the scene in the Goonies where everyone's shooting down their different slides and we all magically end up where we're supposed to be.
We're still muted.
Okay, are we back? Does it look like we have everyone, Terry?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for, that was very successful, at least on our end. So hopefully everyone else in management found their way to the right room. So at this point, I would entertain a motion if somebody had one about this. I see Margaret's hand.
I move that MLAC supports Senate Bill 1580 with the -6 amendment.
Okay, I hear a motion. Is there a second?
This is Patrick, co-chair, and I second.
Thank you, Patrick. Motion is second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? And I do see there was an aye in the chat from Sarah. Just wanted to make sure that got flagged as well. Thank you, everyone, for your work on that, and we appreciate the presentation. So next on the list, I see HB 4005-2, and I see Teresa Van Winkle, who just magically appeared on camera as well. Take it away, Teresa.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm actually pinch hitting today for the bill, the amendments in the bill sponsor. For the record, Teresa Van Winkle, Legislative Director at DCBS. What you're going to look at in members in regards to impact on ORS Chapter 656 is in the amendment, not in the base bill of that is 4005. So what this focuses on is worker leasing companies, which now, as of now, since I think 1993 was the enacting legislation for DCBS to require licensure of worker leasing companies. And when the legislation was created, it was specifically to create the bright line of coverage, either with the worker leasing company having the coverage on behalf of their client employer, or the employer themselves carrying the coverage. But it was making sure that one or the other had coverage, providing clarifications on who was to be covered and who was not to be covered in that particular policy, and then also a notification system for the Workers' Compensation Division. So the reason why this amendment is in front of you is that the base bill is actually focusing on worker leasing companies or professional employer organizations, PEOs, in regards of assessments for paid leave Oregon and also unemployment insurance. During an informational meeting during the interim, WCD presented just kind of the overview of the licensure requirements and the regulatory scope of worker leasing companies. But it was discovered by the House Business Labor Chair, Paul Holvey, that the statutory language doesn't necessarily fit the corresponding administrative rules. And also for one, there is no statutory definition of a PEO. So what the -2 does is working in conjunction with WCD for language for legislative council. What this bill does is just modernizes the worker leasing company model to reflect what it is today. So it doesn't change the scope of licensure, of what responsibilities that a worker leasing company or a PEO it's just it is modernization of definitions. So it does impact the licensure and supplemental statutes in Chapter 656. And then there's also a couple of corresponding amendments in ORS Chapter 737, and that is part of the insurance code. And so it is, again, to align and modernize the definitions in the insurance code for purposes of the main statute is dealing with experience rating, making sure that PEOs will be, are properly identified, and that the current restrictions of experience ratings are continued out in the insurance code on that. So that's really the nutshell. Thank you, Aaron Feldman, for a fantastic bill analysis to help me with my talking points. I will do my best to answer any questions, but I will likely have to pass them along to Representative Holvey to answer, and I'll work with Terry getting information to you members as quickly as possible. And actually, I should clarify too, DCBS does not have, we do not have a position on the bill.
Thank you much. Do we have any, I know that there's some stakeholders and folks that have signed up to testify. Do we have any MLAC member questions from what Teresa just presented for us? Not yet, perhaps. I will circle back to everyone as we hear more. I know this is a somewhat weighty one. Thank you for your initial presentation, Teresa. So I know that we have, I saw that there were, I think, 2 stakeholders that had signed up to testify in advance or ask questions or make comments. It's my understanding, I think we have a Torben Madsen, who I see in the video there.
Yes.
If you want to identify yourself for the record and then make your comments.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Mr. Strickland?
Yes, you're relatively quiet.
All right,
So if you can Speak loud.
My apologies. Can you hear me better now?
To some extent.
All right, I'll fix it even more. How does that sound? I'll do it the old-fashioned way. I'll put the phone up to my head.
I think that's better. Thank you.
Is that better? Excellent. Well, my name's Torben Madsen. I'm an attorney in Florida. I've been doing workers' compensation and PEO representation for over 30 years. I was asked by the National Association of PEOs to review HB 4005 to see what it was doing and how it would affect the PEO industry in Oregon. I will tell you today I'm speaking in opposition to HB 4005 after that review. My review of this has me concerned that I'm not exactly sure what it is trying to fix. Oregon is a well-managed state. It has an excellent reputation amongst PEO, the PEO industry. It provides great services for PEOs, clients, the client employers. Current estimates from the National Association of PEOs is that there are over 3,000 employers that are in the state of Oregon that use the services of PEOs to help them. In addition, they provide services to an estimated 31,000 workers in the state of Oregon. So this is a significant bill and the impact it would have on numerous industries. A review of the bill indicates that it removes the key component of the PEO relationship. It's something called co-employment. And once that's removed, then the PEO is no longer able to be an insurable interest for workers' compensation coverage, and probably not for other insurance, even health insurance and other benefits. So the impact can be devastating. What this would do under the current iteration of this bill is take away the ability of a PEO to provide workers' compensation coverage through its carrier for leased co-employees through the client companies. The accomplishment of that is a negative factor for the state of Oregon and its citizens. It will remove any number of options for small businesses that may not be able to find workers' compensation in the open voluntary market as well. These are big concerns because it also basically makes the PEO an agent. That is not what PEOs do. They're not agents. They provide administrative services that help small businesses. The other thing here is that the current language, by removing the co-employment relationship and making there only one employer, would effectively remove the key element of workers' compensation, which is exclusive remedy. That is extremely harmful and would also make this something that insurance carriers would not want to touch. These are very strong concerns to the PEO industry on our review of this bill, and we would ask that this distinguished group reject this bill in its entirety.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have any MLAC member questions about that? I see Sarah.
Thank you, Co-Chair Strickland. The question is actually for Teresa. Torben, thank you for your information on that. I heard, Teresa, you say that it is simply a modernization of a definition and sounds very different from what we just heard from Torben. Can we get some clarification on that?
I'm kind of, Sarah, I apologize. I normally would be able to speak a little more freely, but because I want to make sure that I don't confuse my role as legislative director and state the feedback from WCD. I think it might be a better question for WCD, honestly, in this circumstance. I normally would answer it, but I don't want confusion of me advocating one way or another, or I'm here as for this particular bill today as a proxy for the bill an amendment proponent.
Okay, I'd like to address it to WCD then. Thanks.
You want me to take that, Derek? Sure. Hi, this is Aaron Fellman. I'm a policy analyst with WCD. As Teresa said, we did help provide some of the language for this bill. Our intent in doing so was to affect the regulatory position of PEOs in the state as little as possible. So it was not our intent to remove the ability for a PEO to provide coverage to its clients, and certainly not to affect the exclusive remedy protections that PEOs currently have. So I guess we would it would maybe be useful to have a more in-depth discussion with Mr. Madsen about his review of the bill, because the impacts that he's identified are certainly not impacts that we were trying to create.
I can't add, sir. There's one thing I could add, because the base bill does do a similar removal of the co-employment provisions for the unemployment insurance, tax payments, and also the paid leave Oregon assessment. So I believe it's consistent in that capacity, for whatever that's worth. But again, I would defer to Mr. Mattson and his testimony and follow up.
Thank you, Ms. Van Winkle. If I can, I will point out that page 9 of the 40052, lines 28 through 30, specifically remove that co-employment relationship by stating there can only be one employer. So again, that is the key element that makes a PEO what it is. It takes away that interest that makes them an insurable interest for an insurance carrier. PEOs are not insurance carriers. They only provide these administrative services for their clients. So that language alone, and there are several points in this bill that follow that alone eliminates exclusive remedy. That alone eliminates the PEO relationship, and that alone eliminates the PEO's ability to be an insurable interest for workers' compensation for its on-site clients and co-employees.
Thank you for the specificity there. I see a hand up from Margaret.
I'm just wondering if you could please repeat the citation on page 9. What lines were you referring to? I was
Yes, ma'am.
busy trying to bring it up.
Sorry about that. I said it pretty fast. I do apologize. On mine, it's page 9, lines 28 through 30 that discuss there only being one employer in this relationship, not two. And that's the key element of a PEO. There has to be two employers, two distinct employers in this co-employment relationship.
And was that in the -2, the -3, or the base bill? Do you know?
That was in the 2 that I have. I'll pull up my version. Give me just a moment if you don't mind. So I'll read to you under page 28, for any hour of work, an employee may not be considered to be employed by both a professional employer organization and the client employer for whom the professional organization has contracted to provide workers' compensation coverage.
And that's in -2?
That's in 2, yes.
I think there's a little confusion. The -3 was also included in the attachment. So I think folks are trying to place where we're at here.
And -3 has the same language, but I have to go dig around to find it, but it's in there as well. But that's the definite location for it, is on page 9 of number 2.
And so if I'm understanding correctly, your concern is that there's a co-employment relationship is currently permissible, which allows an employer to use the PEO's experience rating. Is that part of the process here?
No, sir.
Okay, please clarify.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Strickland.
No, go ahead. I'm trying to put it together here.
Listen, anything with workers' compensation is confusing. Then you throw in PEO, it can be even more confusing. I completely understand. Oregon's an MCP state, a multiple coordinated policy state. So the state already gets the benefit of getting the actual direct employer, we call them the client employer, of getting their direct coverage data. Their loss runs, NCCI reported, they know what their loss data is. So this really affects nothing. All this does is basically create something called a client-based policy, where there is no policy through the work comp or through the PEO. It's only through the client. And that's the disservice that's being done here, because you have to have that co-employment relationship in order to even get the MCP for the PEO and the client company. Many other states use a master policy for workers' compensation, like we use where I'm at in Florida. Florida, we have I saw the estimate a couple of days ago, we have about 7% of the workforce is covered through the PEO relationship here. And that master policy works. But again, this policy, your current iteration, the MCP, provides you with clear data on the client's losses.
So it's just the ability of the PEO to provide that as a service is what's being destroyed?
Yes, sir. That it eliminates, if there is no connectivity of employment, if you're not able to share that employee, then it eliminates the ability of the insurance carrier to insure that employee for that co-employee. They can only take the direct PEO workers or the direct client company workers. And the same thing I'm concerned would also help happen with benefits like health insurance, which would negatively impact these workers in Oregon.
Okay, thank you for that. I see a hand from Ryan.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out for the group, thank you, Chairman Strickland. I just wanted to point out to the group that in Amendment 3, page 17, line 3 is where you'll see that verbiage again for any hour worked.
Thank you. While we're chewing on that, and I would ask Mr. Madsen to hang on the line, as I know the cyclical version of complex issues like this, typically there'll be questions that come up after two more stakeholders have presented. Any other questions before we move on to, I see the next, I believe it's Paul Hughes is the next speaker who registered?
Yes, sir, that's me.
All right, Mr. Hughes, would you like to go ahead and present?
That'd be great. Thank you, sir. My name is Paul Hughes. I'm a licensed insurance agent. I have been one in Oregon since the year 2000. I've had the benefit of working with the SAFE Corporation since 2000 to insure PEOs and to actually work with senior management there to help them to understand how to control PEOs and their unique characteristics. I'm not going to be redundant with what Torben's very succinct comments were, but the baseline between being an employer is insurable interest. So if we take the ability of the PEO to be the employer away, which as Torben stated is what this bill does, it takes my ability away as an insurance agent to procure insurance for the PEO on behalf of the client. So not to be redundant with Torben, but I know that we'd love to work with anybody and everybody to make this bill correct and for the benefit of the citizens of Oregon, but I am also against it.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any questions about Mr. Hughes's comments, MLAC members in particular?
I have one question, and I don't know if anyone on this is Patrick Priest. If you don't mind calling on me, Scott.
Take it away, Patrick.
My question is, it sounds as though this bill would remove the PEO from providing workers' compensation coverage, but that would still need to be provided. Tell me the nature of the organizations that use PEOs and how capable are they of providing this insurance themselves? I don't know if anybody can answer that question. I think by their very nature, they're small employers that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, usually the size of a client employer is 5 to 25 employees, and the value proposition of the PEO in my mind is to let Joe the plumber do his plumbing while the PEO takes care of all the administrative tasks of being an employer. The provision of things like workers' comp, health insurance, and 401k are part of that value proposition. And so not to be redundant, by taking their ability away to be an employer, it takes away their ability to sponsor those types of programs.
I believe Mr. Madsen also maybe had something to add.
Mr. Hughes covered it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, did that answer or address your question, Patrick? Any other questions? I see Teresa has a hand.
I just want to add one comment. As you saw me frantically, I was like checking with the bill sponsor on one of the provisions. And because the language, it didn't seem clear. I think what the amendment sponsor and bill sponsor is trying to do is allow PEOs to provide, offer workers' compensation coverage to their clients, but just in a different fashion than was today. And the language, the current amendment language in both versions doesn't match. So I have a couple of clarifying questions. I'm checking with the Division of Financial Regulation to see what's missing from the insurance code and all that. So, so do not be surprised, members, if you see another set of amendments coming your way in the near future.
I'm waiting to see a -20 in short session. Just the sheer will of someone being able to accomplish that.
You probably just manifested it, and so I'm going to grouse and wrinkle my feet on behalf of some group out there.
Thank you, Teresa. I know we have a few other folks that had signed up to make comments. Getting my list here. I think there's a Jenny Dressler, looks like.
Thank you. Chair Strickland, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jenny Dressler, and I am a lobbyist with the National Association of Professional Employer Organizations. You heard from the experts about the mechanics of this bill. I wanted to provide a little bit of the context as to how it came about, and then we have some actual PEOs here in the room who can speak to the actual impacts to their individual businesses here in Oregon. So I'll try to be very brief. We brought an issue forward as an industry in 2023, an issue with the implementation of paid leave Oregon and the fact that our small employer clients were paying the tax on what we believe was unfairly, given the construct of the bill and the negotiations in 2019 that law actually passed. And we brought the issue forward. We sat down with the employment department, worked with their technology team to figure out how we could address this within the Francis system, and came forward with what we believe was a negotiated compromise at that time. And our bill, which at that time was Senate Bill 881, passed out of the Senate and then came over to the House Business and Labor Committee, where it did not, at the end of the day, end up moving forward. When we came back to the House Business and Labor Committee to have a conversation about what went wrong in the 2023 session, the chair and the committee at that point committed to a conversation moving forward on our concept around paid leave Oregon, and trying to level that playing field for our small business clients. Unfortunately, as those conversations progressed, it became less about fixing this issue around paid leave Oregon and more about the actual structure of PEOs and frankly a misunderstanding about how our industry operates within the state of Oregon. And so what you see, the -2 and the -3 amendments that you see in front of you, the base bill, went from something that we were hoping to be able to work on with the legislature to a bill that ends up unwinding our industry and is a level 1 threat, as members in state, the reasons we don't have any other states who are operating in this way. And so that is the chief concern here in front of you, is we have not had a say in the development of the -2 or the -3 amendments. As you heard from the attorneys, significant impact on our operations, significant impact on our clients. And so that's why we're here today asking you to oppose this bill. You're going to hear from some real folks here who operate within Oregon. So I will leave it at that, but I'm happy to answer questions about how we came to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from MLAC members? Not seeing any hands. It looks like Aaron Carmack next on the list.
Co-Chair Strickland, would you like me to move closer to the L? I'm sort of way at the end. I don't know if you can hear me okay.
Surprisingly, we can hear you just fine. So I think you're at.
Okay, so my name is Aaron Carmack. I work for Cardinal Services. And Cardinal Services is a worker leasing company. That's what we're licensed in Oregon, also referred to as a PEO on here. And so I've been Cardinal CEO for a number of years, but before that, for about 20 years, I was Cardinal's risk manager. So it's great to speak to a group where I can talk about a mod rate or NCCI, and people just don't glaze over or don't understand what I'm talking about on here. So the worker leasing, the PEO model in relation to the workers' comp hasn't changed since 1993. And the important piece with that is in 93, you didn't want to have mod washing. So if someone had a 1.5 mod, that bad mod follows them through the entire process, whether they're with the PEO or out on their own. It's been transparent, like I said, for about 30 years, it's been that way. So House Bill 405 and its amendments, that would end the co-employment. We would not be the employer of record. We could not have the multiple coordinated policies like we've been doing successfully for 30 years on here. And so I agree with the previous two speakers saying that there is no insurable interest when you're not the employer. We're not workers' comp agents on here. So I just found out about the amendments on Tuesday night on here, still trying to really process them. And MLAC is all about stakeholders and careful consideration on there. I know besides, for example, just recently attended the one on employer fraud, which I think is a great idea that MLAC's taking up on here. So I haven't had a chance to fully process all of these, but it's really clear in my mind that removing us being the co-employer, being the employer of record, we can't offer the workers' comp policies that we've been doing for this long. So I really like to ask that MLAC take a look at this in a more thorough manner, looking at the carriers, the workers' comp carriers. As SAFE had a chance to weigh in. Have they talked to the small business ombudsman about this? The small businesses. And I hadn't had a chance to prepare, but to come up with a specific number, but my best guess is that 95% of what we deal with at Cardinal are small businesses on your ones that the plumber reference is a great example where they didn't get into plumbing to deal with workers' comp, HR, 401k, health insurance. They want to outsource that to somebody and make it easy for them on here. Have you looked in the injured worker ombudsman on this type of thing? Really need to get all the different stakeholders in the room, and just ending it like the bill would in 90 days and say, oh, by the way, 3,000 employers go off and try to figure this out on your own is just not very viable. So I'd urge you to oppose House Bill 405 and the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any MLAC member questions or comments? Not seeing any. I see the next person on the list is Teresa McCormick, it looks like.
Yes, thank you for allowing us to be here. My name is Teresa McCormick. I am the president and CEO of TNT Management Resources. I've been a PEO here, domiciled in Salem, for 31 and a half years. Like Aaron, before we had the work comp legislation, and over the years, my company being right here, we have worked really closely with SAFE Corporation, WCB, MLAC. My late husband, who passed away about 5 years ago, also worked for my company, and very frequently, whenever there were work comp issues that would come up in the state of Oregon that didn't even have to do with PEOs, but just in regards to employers, we would be called, we would be brought in, we would be asked to give input on how this affected employers, because they knew that what we do provides a significant value to the small employers. And I think a lot of, what we're talking about in regards to the co-employment relationship, often what we're looking at is, does the PEO provide the work comp coverage? But you have to understand, in the question earlier, what services does a PEO provide? And I think when you understand that, let's say that it's a small business like we talked about, somebody that's got maybe 20 employees. They've gone out, they've tried to get coverage on their own, they're put in the assigned risk pool, they have a high mod. And a lot of times those E-mods are not just because they have a lot of accidents, but they don't have the professional people in place like we do to help them. So they come in, they can't dump their mod, they come into the PEO. I just brought a client on, I'll give you an example, in January, 13-person company. And she doesn't necessarily, the business owner, she doesn't have a bad EMOD at this point in time, but didn't have a safety committee. Didn't have, you know, we can talk about the other aspects of the employment model that this affects. This is not just about work comp. This is about health insurance, didn't have health insurance. She didn't have any type of sick leave policy, didn't even know she had to. You know, and what we do as a PEO is we come in and we help them. We work with the insureds in the state of Oregon. You know, if there are accidents, what do we do as a PEO? Not just provide the coverage, but we help them with the administration of the claims. When does that 801 have to be filed? When does it need to be in? What are the things surrounding that? When you get, you know, an employee that may have modified duties, what do? We work with the carrier, we work with our client on getting modified duties to get somebody back to work. We put together return to work policies and those different types of things. And we've always valued, we've had great relationships with our carrier, with work comp division and those different types of things. So it's not just about our ability to provide the coverage, but it is co-employment. And co-employment is so important because the things that we do from an administrative perspective are the things that these small businesses can't do on their own. They don't have expertise in work comp. They don't have expertise in insurance. They don't have expertise in writing policies and keeping up with. My client that I just brought in January had absolutely no idea that the state of Oregon has restrictions around temperature, air quality, and those different types of things. We bring that to them. We make these employers better. And even if they come in with a higher EMOD, they may go out with a lower EMOD, but it's been tracked all the way through the process. And it's because of our administrative help that we are bringing to that employer as a co-employer to be able to allow them to successfully run and manage those businesses. And we do that, like I said, in so many aspects of their business. This is not just about work comp, but we believe that this bill is going to stop our ability to do this. There will be no co-employment model. The language says, and I don't have the bill because again, like Aaron said, we just got this language 2 days ago. And, you know, and like I said, over 30 years, you guys have always reached out to us when there were issues that involved our industry. It says in that bill that a PEO is not a worker leasing company. That's not true. We are a PEO and a worker leasing company are one and the same. You cannot operate in the state of Oregon as a PEO without being licensed as a worker leasing company. You know, when we started, I mean, Oregon is the one that put together the language of worker leasing company. And then I think we were talking this morning, I think it was around the year 2001 that there was, you know, I think Florida calls us employee leasing companies. Other states call us PEOs. Oregon, I think, is the only state that calls us a worker leasing company. But the professional employer organization language came forward to clarify what we do, because what we do is a co-employment model. We don't provide workers. They don't lease people from us. We're not a temp agency. We're not a staffing agency. We're a co-employer on those employees. Our clients hire and fire, provide direction and control. We are there to assist them. We do all of the management functions, the administrative functions of that, including filing their payroll taxes with the IRS and those different things. And so that's why this is critical. I'm passionate about it because I've been domiciled here in the state of Oregon. In August will be 32 years that I've been operating here. And the value that we have seen over the years to our clients has been amazing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any MLAC member questions or comments?
I have one question. This is Patrick Priest, the co-chair. And I had a question for Teresa Van Winkle. And my question is, you made a comment that there will probably be a dash higher number amendment coming. Does that mean you are not asking us to vote on anything today?
I even if there, to say Co-Chair Priest, given the level conversation and such, if you asked me offline if this was ready for a vote, I would say no. And also logistically, you have time. The bill has its first public hearing on Monday. It is slated for what's called the possible work session on Wednesday. So there is some time. And the reason why it's possible is because to meet with deadlines for the bill to stay alive. So you do have some time, but yes, there is an error. And actually I can point out to you where it's at. And this was pointed out in agency analysis. So both amendments have a reference. It's section 13 in the -3, and I think it's it's section 9 in the -2 in reference to group health insurance. That's not what was intended. So again, I'm still like seeing texts or messages from the DFR staff in regards to insurance code and seeing what I can do to help the sponsor with an amendment tweak.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm always impressed with your juggling skills. I know it is a stressful time in short session. I do see a hand from Sarah.
Thank you, Co-Chair Strickland. I would like to see, if we see it further down the line with another dash amendment, another analysis by WCD. I'm confused by all the testimony and the analysis. They're not in alignment. And if I know Torben or offered, or WCD offered to have that conversation, I would like that to be part of an additional analysis if we see this further. I think that would be very helpful to find them more in alignment. Thank you.
Sounds very reasonable to me. Any other comments from MLAC members? I know we're running short on time, and I think a couple folks have a hard stop at 11, so I want to be respectful of that. I know one question that I have to whomever feels able to answer. So there's a discussion of a co-employer, but then there's also discussion of not having the ability to hire and fire, not directly directing the workforce, not having, necessarily meeting the IRS 20 factors or whatever other employer independent contractor test we want to use. Is there I guess I'm struggling to understand how there's a direct co-employment relationship if there is no actual control over the employees, as opposed to a consulting relationship, which seems to me admittedly unsophisticated and not having the experience of running a PEO. I'm having a hard time to understand and differentiate where there is an actual direct kind of employer or co-employment relationship versus providing services, whether it's payroll processing or other things like that, that I don't think of a payroll company as being a co-employer in this context, where it seems like PEOs are considered a co-employer, at least currently. Is there any sort of, to the peanut gallery, I know we're at time, but if there's anyone that wants to jump in and tackle that one, I'd love to hear some clarification there.
I'd be happy to volunteer.
Sure, go ahead. Yes, I was just going to say, identify yourself for the poor folks having to write the minutes, and then go ahead.
Great. Aaron Carmack, Cardinal Services on here. So think of that plumber. That plumber would be the common law employer because they have direction and control. But in our case, Cardinal Services, we're the PEO, we're the worker leasing company. We're the employer of record. We're the administrative employer. So we're the ones financially responsible for paying FICA or unemployment insurance on here. So that's really the differentiation. Who's the administrative employer and which employer has direction and control. And there's split duties. That's why we call it co-employment.
This is Teresa McCormick. I can add on to that a little bit,
Sure,
in regards to what Aaron was saying. And, when like you were saying, a payroll service, the reason it's co-employment is because there's two employers, but we have different duties. I can go in and help a plumbing company with the things, let's talk about, things I talked about in my testimony, where we're talking about the administration of the work comp claims, helping them with modified duties, return to work programs. We actually file the reports to our carrier, admitting the payroll reports, those different types of things. but that doesn't mean that I have to understand how to go into a business and plummet, because I couldn't. I mean, you would probably have leaks all over the place, in that business when you went to turn the water on. And when I got into this business 31 years ago, it was actually somebody using a worker leasing company at that period of time that told me the value of what this business was. And that's actually why I went into it, because he said, I got into business. He was actually a boat manufacturing company. And he said, I got into business. I know everything about manufacturing boats. And I said, I don't know anything about manufacturing boats. But I had worked at 2 CPA firms before I started, my company. And I said, but I know absolutely everything about payroll and, making sure that, because so often we get people in and they have late, tax deposits to the IRS or the state of Oregon or those different types of things. That's not what they got into business to do. They also don't understand a lot of the things that, I talked about earlier. And that's where it's a split duty, a co-employer, and we handle all of those things. We make sure that the 801s get filed on time, and, and we help them, because in a lot of the situations with the clients that we have, those things don't happen. An 801 doesn't get filed timely. They don't work with the carriers in regards to modifying duties. They don't get people back to work. We handle all of that. So I don't have to understand how to put together pipes or do plumbing or those different types of things, but I will go out there, or my risk management people will go out with the carrier when they're doing, inspections of work sites and things like that. We go with them, and then we work directly with carriers to put together, programs if they see things that are lacking, but we're doing the administrative side of it. I can't go build a house, or I can't drill somebody's teeth if, they're a dentist or something like that, but I can certainly make sure that all of the pieces of paper that they need to do, and we do it as an employer, are done. And so it's a shared employment responsibility. We're, recognized at the federal level. I mean, we file the taxes at the IRS under our federal ID number. It's truly a co-employment model where there is a true segregation of duties.
Thank you for that. I think that's kind of what I'm struggling as a worker to understand, because I do understand that statutorily, it seems currently there is the kind of declared co-employment relationship. But again, I get back to, if the PEO is not providing the tools, not provide, the physical tools, the wrenches and other things like that to do the work, or the vehicles, the van to do the work in, is not directing the work, is not supervising the work, the paychecks aren't coming from the PEO unless perhaps they are, that there's no control over the sort of day-to-day, no furnishing of tools and materials, no work necessarily being performed on the employer's premises except for the consulting and other things like that you've mentioned, and other kind of, again, the traditional tests that we have, whether it's in labor law or in IRS dealing with independent contractors. It's hard for me, not being experienced in this industry, to separate out what's the difference between a CPA that provides this work, between SAFE showing up as a consultant and doing a consultation on worker safety training, an attorney advising on the obligations of an employer under Oregon sick leave law. I know that was something that was referenced, or OSHA requirements for safety committees, things like that. None of those individuals are listed as a co-employer, even though they're performing all these services. So I think that's where I'm kind of struggling to understand the process. So I think, I know we're way over time. I think perhaps some additional submitted written testimony, if there is any, and then it sounds like there'll be a -4, maybe 5 as well in the works as well. So perhaps we can put a pin in this one for today, unless there's huge objections from other MLAC members. Not seeing anything. I know technically next on the agenda, I think we had notice of the upcoming meetings. It looks like we have a February 15th hybrid and a March 7th hybrid. I do want to thank everyone for participating. We had a good stable of very educated and eloquent stakeholders. I want to thank you all for your participation in this meeting. I think that was very helpful. And see if there was anything else before we adjourn.
No, Scott, sorry. I saw that my head wasn't on the camera. I was like, no, sorry, I apologize.
No worries. Thank you much to everyone, and look forward to seeing everybody on the 15th.
Thanks, Scott.